Time once again for AHLPSN this week. I'm T. Sibbs. A lot to talk about this week with Dead Soul, Ryan, and Vibes. Plenty of topics, as we mentioned, to talk about. We're going to hit a bunch of stuff that has to do with the trade deadline coming up and moves and trades that have happened already, especially with this past week. A couple of moves we're going to talk about of note. We're going to talk about some of the teams who are hot and who are not, our own picks of what we think is a team that's played well this past week or a team that's struggled. Some of the teams that are laying in wait, teams that are poised to make a push here at this point in the season, and who we think they are. We're going to take a quick circle back to a topic that we discussed on the last show, and since we have Dead Soul with us, I think it's prudent to revisit it as well. And one of the things we're going to do towards the end is give our all-star picks for each of the division. We're going to each pick, the four of us, a starting six for each division. We each took one, and so we're going to give you who we think are our starters for those games. And, of course, at the end, what you'll be waiting for the most, I'm sure, is the complete and thorough analysis of the Stockton Heat. What exactly is it that makes them tick? And we're going to spend at least another hour to do that at the end. So I hope you enjoy that part of the show. Right, Vibes?
I don't think an hour is enough, by the way.
I can't wait. Stockton.
Somebody is having dinner right now, and I think it's Vibes. Yeah, of course we're not going to do that, but that's just for all the people who think we talk way too much about Stockton. So we'll lay off them.
Stockton, baby, Stockton.
Jesus. You're not eating fast enough. You have to eat a little faster so you can actually talk about the show. Other than that last part, that's going to be our show today. Let's start with the trading deadline. First of all, we got that coming up on July 9th at 5 p.m., I believe it is, when the deadline hits. And, we've seen a lot of trades already in this league. I don't think a trading deadline is going to make too much of a difference, although it could make things a little wilder than what we've seen so far. But if we're going to talk about what we expect at the trade deadline, guys, let me start off with Ryan, and we'll finish with Vibes so he can stuff as much of that pizza in as he can. What exactly, Ryan, would you think is going to happen at this trade deadline? Considering all the moves that have already happened in the league, I can't imagine that we're going to see anything extraordinary at the deadline. But, what's your first impression of what to expect next week, basically?
I think a lot of the teams that are either on the fringe or, barely holding on are going to make some pretty big moves. I think you're really downplaying how big it's going to be. I think a couple of a lot of guys from the NHL teams might also come down as well and add to that. I think it'll be interesting to see. Last season, I thought the trade deadline was pretty big. I thought there were a lot of moves made. There's the infamous Cleveland debacle that went down. I think it'll be more of the same like that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think a lot of the teams have probably learned from that lesson, that hard lesson that the Monsters ended up learning themselves last season. So I'm not really sure we're going to see too many giant send downs like that. I think, the rosters that are set there and the people that are comfortable with each other on the team, the GMs are going to want to keep those guys together for as long as possible, obviously. And, this is going to be their last chance to really kind of, try and get some talent maybe from some other struggling teams that are not in the playoffs and see if they can, make that run.
Vibes, are you alive? Are you done eating yet?
Yeah, no, I'm here. I'm good. Excuse me. I mean, at the rate we're going, I mean, the only thing left to trade is going to be logos. There's not going to be anybody left to trade. Because everyone just likes to make trades in this league. So
sure.
I don't know. No, I mean maybe there's some teams that'll be, maybe just one guy short. Maybe they need to add a guy offensively or defensively. Um, Things like that. Maybe a team who has absolutely no shot feels like they're gonna make the blockbuster move and try and trade their whole roster for another roster and probably come up short anyway. But I mean, trade deadlines are always fun, right? I mean, there's always that one or two trades that really grab our attention, and I wouldn't expect any less this season.
Well, Vibes, are you going to go and grab a few lefty? Because it looks like you got a plethora of righties there, pretty much
How
exclusive.
about you keep your fucking eyes off my roster? How about that?
Oh, by the way, Heather LB says you're a cunt.
I'm
wanna
a
throw that.
whoa on air. Really? Did you really just say that to me?
Oh, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
well-
I was just reading it off
Well,
the teleprompter here.
Yeah.
That's terrible, man.
Well, we've heard you've had not a lot of good things to say about her either, so.
Well, she's a fucking cunt.
Oh,
so, yeah,
there we go. All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I started it. I started.
Yeah,
Hey,
that's
don't call me a cunt on air unless you're gonna.
Hey, there's a one cunt limit on the show. Okay, can we just keep it to that? I've used mine up now.
Oh.
Um,
Anyhow,
I used mine too now, so that's it. We're
did it
good.
twice though, unfortunately.
I'll save mine for later.
Always good to save it for later. Where the hell were we before Vibes lost his fucking mind?
trades.
Trades.
Trade
Okay.
deadline.
So, so, uh, Ryan was saying that you're expecting something a little more explosive this time around. Let's talk about some of the trades, some of the major ones that we've seen so far, and what we feel about what we've seen and what we think it's really going to do for the teams that have made these trades. Some of the ones that Vibes has mentioned to us is the Mafia Man trade, Mega Fresh, Killer QZ, was it Squatches and Kingerman to San Diego, and then Heineken's Hell Ninja, Team Run Man, and Blake Dangles coming back. Certainly a pretty sizable one there. And I know Mafia Man, obviously, from Hershey last season, a damn good player and somebody who was kept off the management team, so he may have been a little salty when the season started, but didn't get off to as good of a start as he did with Hershey, but is still a damn good player. Those are the kinds of trades that I think you have to look for. Is who do you know is a really good player and who is dying on the vine on some team, and you could pick up and maybe take advantage of. And I'm thinking Mafia Man's one of those guys who, if things settle well enough in San Diego for him, he could be a big help for that team, who didn't have a great week this week, but still, was one of the hotter teams last week, and getting a guy like that can mean a big difference for them.
Yeah, I mean, picking up a guy like Mafia Man, that could absolutely make a difference. I don't know how it's going to work out for him in San Diego, but San Diego has a better team than Bridgeport, so I would assume that maybe he'll have a better supporting cast. But what that translates to remains to be seen.
I mean, in the trade, they did lose two damn good defensemen in Heineken's, and I think Team Run was the other one that really stuck out to me. He was 7-3-1 so far through this season. I think that's a lot to give up for a big, name forward. I think it's really a move to try to separate themselves and really add through offense.
Heineken's is another guy who I've played with before in a league, and even a season or two ago was a call-up or somebody who was able to play in the pros when he was with us in Tucson in Season 3. We eventually, I believe we lost him at some point because of that. He's got the talent, and again, another guy who may have been lost in the shuffle of all the players that are coming around now. another guy who has been around and proven himself and has been on championship teams or finals teams. So again, those are the kind of guys that come up in these trades. You start seeing some of these names that we would never have thought we'd see in a big trade like this, and now he and Mafia Man involved in this one. And I think it could help both teams, but with Bridgeport, it's hard to say what's going to even give them a chance against Hershey in the long run. Go ahead, Ditzel.
Some of these trades, I mean, it looked that trade was a fairly balanced trade for the most part. I mean, what you give up in forwards, you get back in defense, and that kind of trade can typically benefit both teams pretty well. I guess we'll have to wait and see exactly just how well this will benefit with having Mafia Matt added to their roster. But let's see, I think this last week here,
San Diego didn't have a very good week this past week, if I have that correct. I don't think they did that great.
No, they're actually, I think, one of the they were one of the teams we were going to probably talk about very soon here. So at least I was going to mention them because they did have a pretty rough week.
The other trades of note, I think some of the ones that we put down here are Utica with Yensanity and RJ81 going to Albany for Philly Gonna Spank You, which I think that's a fairly even trade. I don't know at this point what Albany is hoping to do. I think that's kind of the bad part of going to a team like Albany is that there are a bunch of players over there who don't see any reason to keep the season going, and so when you get somebody from that team, they're probably so thankful to play on a team in contention that they're going to do whatever they can. But anybody going over there is going to have a hard time feeling motivated to play these games, and so I think any trade you make with Albany at this point, Vibes, is probably a good one because any of their players is just dying to probably get off that team.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like that's actually, although, like you state, the fact that Albany has struggled and right now they're kind of just no man's land at this current point in time. But I think that's a good trade just as far as personnel-wise for Albany. I mean, they give up Philly Gonna Spank You, and I mean, he's had I would say probably a subpar season. I mean, he's a decent defenseman. He's always been pretty good, but he's struggled so far. And then they give up Yansanity, who I mean, he was just recently kind of coming on a little bit. I'm sorry. They get Yansanity for him, as well as RJ81, who is a decent defender. So I mean, overall, just from a personnel standpoint, I think it's a good trade for Albany.
I don't know. I think I see it the other way. I think Utica adds one of the better defensemen in the league. I mean, if you look at his last couple seasons in NHL 17, he went 15-6 with in season 3, and then 15-10 last season with Utica. Both solid seasons. I expect that'll really really help their defensive core.
One other trade that we've discussed a little bit, just because again, for the teams involved and the players involved, is Durham's going from Bridgeport over to Cleveland for It's Galley in that trade, and Galley's been moved around a lot in this one this week. Ryan, if you want to talk about this trade and what it means for these teams.
For sure, Durham's goes back to Cleveland. He had been traded. He was one of the casualties of the major, Columbus-Cleveland transformation, unfortunately. But he gets sent back to Cleveland with Big Freeze again. And in exchange for It's Galley, he's been having a terrific season. He's been putting up, pretty good numbers. Bridgeport then actually flipped him for Nutty Outlaw, who's a solid player in his own right as well. So you kind of have like a 3-team deal there. Not necessarily a 3-team deal, but involving 3 teams. Looking at it, I mean, D. Herms this week put up terrific numbers. He went 3-0, 15 points, 9 goals, 6 assists. Really, really good week. The other 2 struggled. However, I think it's a little bit early, to really call who won or who lost. There's a lot to see in the weeks coming up.
Derm's 18 sounds like a skin disease. Like a government issued skin disease. Um, no, I like Herms though. He's good, and I like that trade for Cleveland. I mean, that reunites Herms with Galley, I believe. Not Galley. Who the hell am I thinking of? Yeah, well, Gauchi the Beast is the guy that I'm thinking of. So it reunites them too, and I think that they've had some success dating back to last season. So we'll see what happens there if those two play together, and if Herms is more active, and if he can keep his skin disease at bay.
Well, I tell you what I like about Dave. D Herms, or Dave, as I know him. He's not only a good player, but he's also good personality to have on the club. A rarity in this league. Pretty damn mature guy, and and a leader. And if you can get that on a playoff bound team the way Cleveland is, um, with management that he's familiar with, there is no downside to having him back on this team. I think that's a really nice move for them, and they're getting the band back together. It looks like a little bit, and that can't do anything but help Cleveland. I'm sure Freeze is thrilled to have him back on the team.
Yeah, I almost feel like Freeze is trying to undo the web that was created last season when they had those few guys sent down from the NHL, and I almost feel like he's trying to get a second chance at life here with some of the moves that he's made. And honestly, I'm a fan. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Herms. He's one of my, believe it or not, he's one of my favorite players in the entire league. I had him for a brief moment in season 2 with Chicago before he was ripped from my heart and taken from his home and returned back to the Binghamton roster,
Mm-hmm.
which I didn't agree with, but that's a whole different story. But the point is that he's one of my favorite players in the entire league, sees the ice very well. He can be shifty when it's time to be, and he plays a really good team game. And apparently he's got some chemistry with some of the guys over in Cleveland. So, um, putting him back in the fold is a really good move for them.
Yeah, I'm sure he's happy about it too. I'm sure he's going to play a lot better on that team.
Let's talk a little bit about we're talking about guys who have been traded. Some of the trades, unless you've got some more trades that you want to discuss. I did notice that Hershey made a trade to bring Myers 03 over, and I think that's a decent little move for them. Myers is a decent player, and probably just shoring up the team a little bit there. I don't think they have any worries in the Eastern Atlantic, but always good to get your team ready for a run, and we'll see how much more Hershey feels they need to do in the coming week with the deadline coming up. But are there any? Let's talk about teams that may be looking to make some big move, maybe missing a piece or two. Uh, might be pretty active come the trade deadline. Let's start with you, Ryan. What you have a team or two, or maybe more than that you feel are missing a piece or two that probably going to try and do something before the deadline is up?
I mean, I could see after this recent surge, I could see Hartford. I don't know if they mess with the mojo. I don't know what they do. They're going 9-0 this week. Another team that we're probably going to talk about later. However, they are only 6 games in the win column behind Hershey. They're not that far. Now, loss column's a little bit different, but I can see them trying to upgrade, trying to bring someone in to kind of get over that hill. We'll see how active they are. They were my team. I think the other one was Grand Rapids is another one that can try to make that move and try to create separation. They're in that 4th spot now in the Western Central.
Anyone you're looking at, Vibes? Any team specifically that you think should be looking to make moves before the trade deadline?
I feel like I'm kind of stepping on someone's toes here because I feel like one of you guys have mentioned this to me, but the Grand Rapids Griffins. I mean, they have a really really solid offensive group there, and their defense. They have they have a few good pieces. They're not really a complete defense, and I feel like if they were able to add a piece on the back end there, it might really help them out moving forward.
Well, you mentioned, we did talk about them a little bit in the before we came on the air tonight. Grand Rapids, the numbers are not too bad, but of late they've been allowing 15 or more shots on goal per game. Some of the most recent games where they've been in the 20s, and so that's usually not a formula for winning games in this league. This stat usually, to me, leans towards team defense, possibly too many rebounds by the goaltender, but it typically is more of a team defense issue. You look at their time on attack and the differential. They obviously are pushing the offense well because they're right up in the top 5 in that. The question is, what do you do with a team that does well offensively but are giving up a lot of shots and are giving up a lot of goals so far this season? They've given up 159 goals, which is tops in the Western Central. So they're getting a lot of shots taken on them. They're giving up more goals as typical. What do you do? Is it a team defense issue? Is it a goaltending issue? Do you worry about what you have in net with Alex Cleroux and T-Bot, who I like both of these goaltenders, and I think they both can take you to the playoffs, but is that going to be enough? I'm not 100% sure that their goaltending is where it needs to be. I think they probably do need to shore up on defense a little bit, maybe consider goaltending. And, there are a couple of guys out there. We've mentioned Tyler Lokey, and the Lehigh Valley Phantoms are still in this one, and so I don't know if they're going to be apt to giving away Tyler too quickly anytime soon, but it's certainly a possibility. The other guy I was thinking about that could be useful to them is Clutch Dolphin from the Americans, who is also a solid goaltender, and the Americans could use some offensive-minded players. I think Grand Rapids has some room to move, and I don't know if they don't do anything. I'm not sure that they're a team that's going to be able to really do anything in the Western Central. I think when you've got the core that they have, and you're going to have to deal with Manitoba and Iowa and Cleveland, most likely, and you're trying to keep Charlotte off your heels, you've got to do something to shore up this defense. And I think, if it's a defenseman or if it's a goaltender, I think that's what they have to figure out.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I think that the money is going to be in defense for them. I mean, I think that with the exception of maybe Defiant and maybe Marks, they've kind of struggled. I mean, maybe Optimus as well. Pretty decent defenders, but with the exception of them, maybe 3 or 2, I feel like they've had a rough time. They've had a rough go at it. And T-Bot and Cleroux, like you mentioned, they can both be pretty effective goaltenders with a good defensive core. So my money is on a faulty defense, and I feel like if they were able to correct that, maybe add a few pieces in that department. Their forward group can play with any forward group in the league.
Right.
Just outright. Their forward group is just as good, if not better, than any other forward core in the league. And if they were able to get a little bit of help on the back end, I think they could be think they could certainly be a problem for us and any other team really in that division.
They certainly won't be hiring the help of Tyler Lokey because he is an AGM.
Yeah, no, I was just saying as a point, if you could get somebody like that, somebody who's
like that,
not doing, the team isn't doing incredibly well. That's why I mentioned Clutch, because I think that's that is somebody who could be helpful to the team if that's somebody that you could possibly pick up.
I mean, I'm guilty of not really watching these guys play, so this is all going to come from speculation and just seeing like the stats and seeing how these players are, and like just going over the roster really quick for the Griffins here. I mean, a lot of these players, to me, forward wise, they're very good, very talented, very skilled guys, but like team defense might not be their very first thing coming to mind. I think they might be a lot of running and gunning kind of style of play, which will not work in the playoffs against the teams that are going to be going into the playoffs. So it might come down to them kind of restructuring how they play, unless they already do play a defensive game. And I'm just, making stuff up here. But based on what I can at least see from stats and from the players here, I think that, as a team, they probably have to tighten up defensively, probably get a few defenders, maybe get a new goaltender to really make that push. And I mean, if they're serious about it, they're going to probably have to make those moves to make this team actually successful in the playoffs.
Another team that's kind of in the same boat a little bit, being at the edge of the playoffs, but not really having anybody necessarily chasing them at this point, is Utica. They're in there with Toronto and Syracuse and Binghamton, all solid teams, all, at least 9 points up or more on Utica. But again, in that division, the way Toronto's been playing, Binghamton, Syracuse, again, just have been solid teams this season. Utica's playing really well, but you got to figure that there's got to be a point where they need to look at some additions that are going to help them. They have no problem scoring goals, but again, I think they are giving up a good amount of goals in their league, and seem to have those games where they play well, and then all of a sudden they lose 6-2, and there's a complete defensive issue. So. I kind of feel like Utica has to figure out what their needs are, and if they need to try and slow down, all three of these teams. I think Toronto may play more. They certainly score a lot, but they are so defensive minded and have had great goaltending. They've just lost Mello to the NHL, but certainly with that goaltending that they had, they weren't really worried about their defense so much. I think Syracuse and Binghamton also can put the puck in the net. So, does Utica worry more about defense because those three teams have let in a lot less goals than they have? What do you do if you're the Utica Comets and you're going to try and compete in the Eastern North in the playoffs?
Their defense is at this current point in time. I mean, they have two guys over there in Philly going to spank you now, who has just moved to them, and as well as LR Crazy, who historically have been pretty good defenders. But I mean, you got Philly, who's 7-7-1, and then you have LR Crazy, who's 5-10 on the season, and then -4 and -6 respectively. And they have about, I don't know the exact number, but they have about $8 million in cap committed to those two. That's an awful lot of cap for two defenders who are currently, without a doubt, playing at a subpar level. And if you're going to make any sort of a run, I think that's where you got to start and try and correct that right off the jump.
Looking at Utica, it looks like they have, what was it? I'm doing the math in my head now here. 14.5 mil plus a non-contract GM put it into defense. You can see where they really put their money.
Right.
And some of these guys really are underperforming, from their, money standpoint. It'll be interesting to see whether they can, pick it up. There are some really good players up front. You have Noiseman. Hazy Eyes is a good player. I know that he played with Anthony D in CHL in Season 2 and Season 3 as well. They have Raguso, who's a solid player. There's definitely some talent up front. And then some goaltending's not bad either. I call So What is a really, really solid goaltender.
Yep.
Whether they make a move to change their defense around or not, or whether they stick with it, despite it underperforming, will be interesting to watch coming up.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that, man. I mean, outside of LR and Philly, they have a lot of money committed to a defense that is not the greatest at this current point in time. That's a lot of cap.
Those guys have a lot of talent, though. I mean, there's no denying it. Some of those guys have, they've done quite well in past seasons. Why?
Yeah, Alchi can be good as well. So can Dirk. So I mean, they got some players, but. Go ahead, Detzel. I'm sorry.
I was completely cutting you off, so I apologize.
No. It's fine. Go ahead.
Anyhow, I for me, the Comets really do remind me of Springfield. Just again with some of the players that are there and just the style that I would see these players play. Like I know that I've played against and with some of these players, and from both teams, here and there throughout the seasons. So to me, these two teams seem very similar in that their style is, pretty, it could be a little bit more one-dimensional than some of the other top teams, for example. Because I mean, if you go and look at any of the teams like the Marlies and the Crunch and the other good top teams, they have a very well balanced line with everything. Like they definitely play. They have their guys that can run in and score and do all the really annoying stuff that can drive everybody crazy, like defensive wise. But they also have the players that will take their time a little bit more, make the better plays, and move the puck around to their D instead of maybe have their forwards run in and do all the work. And I think that's what really separates some of these teams sometimes. And I'm not saying this team is exactly that, or that the Grand Rapid Griffins are, but just judging again by the players on these rosters, I just the way that I see the stats, it speaks to me. That's kind of maybe the system and style that they're playing, and they probably will have to adjust to that, along with getting some more of the pieces that might help them in a defensive way. But I mean, it really comes down to everybody having to be on the same page and actually play defensive hockey. Because I mean, whether it's the NHL or AHL, that's really the style that succeeds, in this league.
Any other teams you guys see that might be candidates for making some moves to I would say first get out of your division? To me, that's kind of the again, as a manager, you guys would have better feel for this, especially if you've gone a decent amount in this league. But I kind of feel like you have to play initially to get out of your own division. You have to set your team up to be able to do that first. Any of these other teams here that are even if they're in first, second place, that should be more concerned about being set up for their divisional playoffs and maybe need to make a move or two.
I think the Moose.
Good.
The Moose need to make some moves.
Moose definitely won't be doing shit. I'll tell you that much.
Come
We're
on,
gonna sit on
make
our
some
hands.
moves.
No, I'll tell you a team that definitely needs to do something because they've found themselves towards the upper end of the standings. And I mean, I don't know if someone has a really close relationship with whatever god they choose to, but that's the only way that they're still there because they are not a very good team. And listen, I'm calling you out. That is the Ontario Reign. You guys are not that good, and you guys need to make some moves because if you think for 1 second you're going to get out of that division with that roster, it's not happening. I like some of the guys over there. I like Orioles. I think he's a good manager. Not the biggest C. Freeman fan, but I'm sure that he probably he just needs to become a better person. But anyway, I just think that roster is not going to make it in that division. It's just not happening. So they better figure out something.
Ryan, we haven't heard from you in a while.
I think I was looking at the shout box a little bit earlier, and everyone's freaking about Melo going up to Toronto
right.
and Mr. Penguin coming down. I don't think that it's something that everybody should be freaking out about. I think they should give Mr. Penguin a chance in net. I know I've played with him. He's a really solid goaltender. He was up on a Toronto team. This season is not that good. So his stats are, not overly great, again, because it's a product of his team. I think with that Toronto Marlies team, he can make a little bit of noise. We'll have to see, though. And then, obviously, I think they have Watermelon as their it's a Watermelon as their backup. He's been quite good, too. So even if he's not, Mr. Penguin's not, killing it, they still have someone to fall back on. That's doing quite well this season at 17-4 with an 82.6 save. So
Mr. Penguin's good, but he's no Melo. Let's just be honest.
Don't get me wrong, you're right, but I'm just saying that they shouldn't be hitting the panic button and trading for a goalie. Is probably the point that I'm making.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think they can do just fine with Mr. Penguin, actually, especially with the guys up front and with the defense that they have, just the style they play all together. And I have seen Penguin in net, and he's actually quite solid. I mean, he's not a Mellow, but I think he'll do just fine with the Marlies and help them continue to win like they are.
Watermelon actually has said here in the YouTube chat that Penguin is a million times better than him, which might be an overstatement. But I think Mellon's point is that they're not concerned about it, and that they trust in Penguin. Certainly not a great record for him this season. I believe he's at 5-15 with Toronto. Goals against is up there. But that, again, I'll as a goaltender, I might be a little biased, but I say it over and over again. It all depends on how good your defense is, and your skill will only get you so far if you don't have, guys clogging up the middle, stopping cross creases, blocking a good deal of shots that, maybe you should have had 15 shots on net. They block 3 or 4, so you've got like 11 shots on net that game. That's the difference between a goaltender who is moderately successful and one who has a great record on a really good team. It's because of the defense, and so I think that's a big it's a big difference. And if Penguin when Penguin plays down here over the next couple of weeks, I think we see the numbers happen. I think we'll see good numbers, and Watermelon is still a really solid goaltender. I think he undersells himself.
Well, it's interesting though. I mean, that division we should maybe really quickly talk about, just really briefly here. That with the Sens, the Crunch, and the Marlies. I mean, the Sens we haven't really given much to love to, but we should right now. Like these guys are 62 points in. They're only 4 points behind Toronto right now, and all these guys are competing for that first spot. And I think this is not so. Concrete right now, the way that we're looking at things. I think with these teams, this is going to be a real good race from now on. And for me, it's not as easy to call as it was earlier to just say that, hey, the Marlies are going to take this. It could very well be the Crunch taking it again, or the Sens, could just come right up and take this whole thing in that division. So, I mean, they've got a really good roster set up there, and I mean, they've got some excellent goaltending with Vezina there. They also have, I guess, their secondary goalie who hasn't been doing quite as well as him, obviously, with Custom, but their roster overall looks to be pretty solid. I mean, what's your take on it there, Vibes and Ryan? Do you know much about that team?
The Senators they are not pretending. I'll tell you that much. They are a very good team. They're strong down the middle with Luck as well as Boonsop, who's a Xbox guy. But they are. I feel really weird saying that name, by the way. But anyway, it's a really good division, and I mean you have 3 really good teams on the top, and then even Utica, who, while I don't see them as as a complete of a team as the other 3, they're still good as well. But the top 3 up there you can make a case for any of them, and like you said, Dead Soul, this is not the Marlies division. This is a division that is being fought for, and any 3 of those top teams there can definitely figure out a way to get to the top somehow.
And I'm not gonna lie, to me, it just looks more like the more exciting one to watch at the moment, just because it's so close right now with those teams. Obviously, your division is as well, and with the Western Pacific as well being relatively close for at least the second place. But to have this 3 teams competing for that first spot is pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun division. That's for sure.
And Toronto, I think I might have said this before the show came on. Melo's a really good goaltender. There's no question about that. But you have to worry about what happened last season with him. And he's had some rumblings in the shout box, and I never know if it's because he's just trying to get people to think he's nuts, or he really is nuts. So I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily that Melo goes up. You would think he wouldn't have that same kind of blow up at the end of the year like he did last year, but he could, and you'd be out a goaltender leading into the playoffs, and we saw how much of an issue it was for the Marlies last season. So I kind of think this gives them more stability, and in the end, it might actually help them out.
I mean, I'm paying attention to the chat box on YouTube, and Corey R, I'm not sure who that is. Is that Watermelon or something? But
yeah.
He's saying that.
Yeah.
So he's saying that they wanted Penguins down here. with the Marlies. So I mean, I don't know, how much truth hangs on to that statement, if that's real or him just trying to make himself feel better. But if that's the case, maybe they saw something ahead of time. I just butchered the word saw. But if maybe they saw something ahead of time and they don't want to risk that from last season, what happened with the Marlies,
Right.
maybe there's more to it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's so. I mean, we'll see as time goes on, but I think it's a good move for them. I think they're fine. Hey, since we're talking about teams already, why don't we get to the who's hot, who's not segment of today's show, and start talking about some of the teams that are on the rise and some that are starting to fall apart at this point or have been falling apart. So I want to start this up with Ryan and talk to us. Actually, you know what? We'll start with vibes because I want to make sure that he gets in his team and he doesn't complain that we're overrunning him. So
Uh,
why don't you start out, vibes? Talk about a
uh,
team that
if you want me to, I mean,
sure.
I don't want to take full credit because I guess you guys saw it the same way as I did.
Well,
But
it's kind of hard not to
um,
say a 9-0 team this week is not the one on the rise. But go ahead.
yeah, and I mean, a lot of things. There's still a lot of question marks, but as of right now, I think it's time that maybe we all give the Hartford Wolfpack a little bit of credit. Yes, I am saying the Hartford Wolfpack. I know that there's a lot of people who are not huge fans of Premier Player, and I could take or leave the guy myself. But that being said, I think it's time that maybe we give a little bit of credit, not too much credit, because this upcoming week will really define them as a team.
Hmm.
But I think it's like maybe 12 or 11 or 13 points behind the Hershey Bears. And this previous week, as you mentioned, they went 9-0. They're 9-1 and 9-1. I'm sorry, in their last 10 because 9-1 makes 11, so that's impossible. But so they're 9-1 in their last 10, and they've beaten the Binghamton Senators, and they've also taken down the Hershey Bears, who are ahead of them in a division. They've climbed from like sixth in that division all the way up to second. And for the brief period of time that we have here, I think it's about that time that we give them maybe just a little bit of respect, not too much, but a little bit of respect and a little bit of notoriety.
I really
Yeah,
think
that was
next week is going to be the big teller playing the Western Central.
Yeah.
And then starting out with Toronto, too, next week. It's no easy task. I think we'll have the better picture next week to see what they do.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, Hartford's gotten some good play. Building Watt, who is a veteran, has been around this league from the beginning, and just a decent guy to have on your team. Period. Uh, in his 3 wins this week, 8 goals, 6 assists, a +11. Has just had a tremendous week out of him. Gremlin 9 goals, 2 assists, +7. Hockeytown 4-9 and a +9. So a lot of good offensive play. Manbear, who also went 3-0 this week, had 2 assists and a +5, and was part of that 1-0 shutout of Binghamton. So his defense that game is obviously critical in that win against the Senators, and just some good performances. But let's keep in mind too that the opponents that they played this past week have a combined record of 172, 199, and 34. So the teams they played, I think only 2 of them were actually over 500, the rest of them under. And so not the biggest opponents to kind of lead into what Ryan was saying. And, Toronto to start the week, got Manitoba, Charlotte, Cleveland, Grand Rapids, and Iowa as well next week. So we'll check back with Hartford next week and find out if they are a team that is for real. If they put up some good numbers and a winning record this week, I'll believe in them.
Yeah, that'll be the true test, without a doubt. That was the team I was picking to, obviously, because they had such a good week. But I didn't look into those little essentials that you just mentioned. So I mean, that's gonna certainly play into next week and see exactly where they stand and if they've actually turned anything around or if they just basically beat up on some struggling teams.
You see what happens around here, guys? This is the way it always goes, and don't let anyone ever tell you any
Oh,
different.
here we go.
These guys catch wind that I'm picking a team, that I like a team, and it spreads through the grapevine, the word of mouth, and then suddenly they all start picking my team, trying to take away from my thunder. And that's just the reality of it. And don't let any of these guys here tell you
Catch
any
wit.
different.
Like we
Because,
hear from you all week. Like we know what the hell you're thinking.
Let me guess. We'll probably pick the same team that's not so hot.
Oh, I doubt
well,
that. I doubt you won't. I doubt you will. For me, I guarantee you won't. It'll be totally
Well, let's
different.
just see.
Anyway, let's see what Vibes picks for his team who is not hot.
Well, yeah.
my team who is not hot, I think that right now the Charlotte Checkers are in a bit of a flux.
Okay.
They are 5-4, I believe, in their 5-4-1 over their last 10, and right, because 5-4 plus 1 that makes 10. So yeah, 5-4-1, and they have fallen from a team that was potentially battling for a second spot in that division to a team who is maybe like sixth or possibly even seventh now. And I think that team's in trouble, and unless they can turn something around, they're going to be out of it.
Well,
That's
I
not
mean,
the team that I thought you'd choose, by the way.
no,
Also,
no.
that's ridiculous. But
Well,
anyway,
the
that's all.
the reason I just kind of cut in here is because I took a picture of the standings earlier in the week. I think it was Sunday, just after the games there. So there's just a couple games played, but they basically have literally stayed at the same spot. They were 5-4-1 in their last 10 when I took this picture, and this is looking exactly the same right now as we're seeing right now. So they've basically just hovered above water. They just kind of stayed where they were, just that one, one win above 500. So it's not like they've really dropped significantly.
Well,
In terms.
they've been in a fall for about 2 weeks now.
Oh, okay, yeah. So like a steady fall, but more of like a kind of.
Well, I'm not
Kind of
saying
like
that
a hovering fall.
well, they began to fall. So okay, so if
Steady
that's
decline.
ridiculous, so then who's your team that's fallen then? Let's hear
Well,
this
Now,
one.
you could say the Bruins or the Gulls, actually.
No, I want to hear Ryan's.
so I definitely, after that entire expose earlier, I thought you would have picked the Ontario Reign, who went 3-5-2 this past week, up against a pretty difficult Central Division.
So is that
a
your
little bit
team?
shocking.
Is that your team?
I was gonna go with the Gulls, but like now
That
I'm wondering
sucks.
with
That
Ontario.
team sucks.
You
What
just-
a bad team to pick. You suck.
But yeah, Ontario losing, only winning 3 games going up against the Central, and then they also had a couple, losses from within their division, losing to Bakersfield. Just not a great week. And I know they beat Iowa, and that's a good win. But other than that, not much to look forward to from last week. Definitely a week to move on from.
The Gulls, and you know what? I thought that with the acquisition of Mafia, man, shit, man. It's just funny the way things work out. Because when they made that trade and they brought him in, I actually I think we had a meeting on Tuesday, and I believe I mentioned them to you guys as a team that maybe could be, a team that has snuck under everyone's radar, but could maybe be poised for a run. And it's completely gone the other way. They've absolutely hit the shitter. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, you mentioned Charlotte, Dead Soul, and yeah, I mean they'd gone 4-5 in weeks 3 and 4, now 5-4 this week.
That was Vibes that mentioned that.
Well, you said you had taken a snapshot as far as what their record was. So yeah, they've been relatively consistent. 6-3 in week 2, 6-3 in week 1. So they were starting off well. Then they dropped a couple of weeks where they were below 5. Now they're back over 500 for week 5. Playing Iowa, Tucson's been playing incredibly well. They beat them this week. Losing to Texas, Stockton, San Jose, not something that can be totally unexpected, really. But beat San Diego this week as well. Beat Ontario. Losing to San Antonio is probably one that shouldn't have happened. So they were close to having another 6-3, or at least a 5-4 record. I don't know if Charlotte is necessarily hitting the skids, but they've got a lot of talent on this team that doesn't seem to be hitting where they should be, and you would expect them to be a little further up than where they are in the Western Central, but they are just 1 point on the outside of that last playoff spot with Grand Rapids, and that could wind up being a fun run for a playoff spot for that last one. And the Moose better certainly take notice and continue to improve and do well, because those two teams are not far behind them.
Yeah, because I mean, with the race that they've got going on, it's so close. It's just like in the Eastern North there. So like everybody's competing for, basically second or third, and they're very close, each of those teams. So you guys all better be careful of vibes along with Griffins. But we'll have to wait and see if some of you guys make some trades that are actually going to help any of your teams out.
That's all fine and good, and I really appreciate the dramatics. I really do. But I've been sitting here trying to figure out whether or not I'm going to be able to catch Cleveland before the season is over, because they keep winning. So I'm not really too worried about the teams behind us.
Yeah, I know you don't worry about too much, so I'll leave you be for that. But yeah, my team that I was picking, I know you probably already heard me say it. Mainly was actually the Bruins, because they're the ones who dropped out of their 4th spot, and they went 1-9 in their last 10. So, they've dropped quite a bit and allowed other teams to step over them, and they're going to have to do a lot of work to kind of climb their way back into that, or as Vibes would say, claw their way back up.
You're making fun of his accent, aren't you?
No.
Just a little bit. All right, so that's your. And so who's your hot team this week, Tetzel?
Oh, the hot team. Well, I already copied it. Remember, we already copied Vibes.
Oh, that's right, you did too. Okay.
It was
Obviously, the hot team's the Heat.
See,
right?
I would have said it. I would have if you wanted to have it like in a sealed envelope and then
Not
do it on
really.
live air, I would have been able to prove that it wasn't the almighty Vibes that we stole it from. But
All
The
right,
hot team's the Heat.
let's move on to Ryan, so we can get some semblance of intelligence on this discussion, and tell us who you thought the hot team of the week was.
So I don't want to, break all the rules here, but there's a couple really hot teams, and the main kind of theme here is that they're all on top of their divisions. You look at Toronto, you look at Cleveland, you look at San Jose. All of them. I mean, Cleveland going 9-1 in their last 10, San Jose going 8-2, Toronto going 8-2. That's what you need to do to stay on top of your division, is just win, 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 win. And all 3 of these teams this past week have done that. I know it's really easy, low hanging fruit, but it's the truth.
yeah, and like you guys did mention with the teams that Hartford had played, it's not probably comparable to the other teams that these other guys have faced. So that's a little bit more of a bigger win for the teams already doing well in that regard.
Yeah, we have to be a little careful too with Cleveland, because some people are sensitive about hearing Cleveland too much. But
Well, they're going to hate our next topic then.
well, we're almost done with this one. Who's the team that's not hot for you, Ryan?
I thought I said Ontario. Ontario is
Okay.
my not hot team of the week. They were going 3-5-2 in their last 10,
Okay.
having a tough go against the Central.
Wait, did he just get 2? I thought he said San Diego. Now it's Ontario?
No, I said.
Are you listening
I
to the
said
same show
popular
at all,
answer
or?
would be San Diego.
How come he gets 2 it? I only get 1.
I had 3 hot teams, so.
I didn't say you had to pick one. By the way, these were
There were
your
no
rules,
rules.
dude. It wasn't my rules, so I could have picked a couple of
There was
teams.
no rules.
There was no rule. There was
Gross
no
injustice,
explanation.
let me tell you.
Okay.
I'm sorry I'm taking airtime away from you, Vibes. My bad.
It's just unreal.
Well, we already talked about Hartford being the current team that's hot, and really the reason why I wanted to bring it up is probably the same reason that Ryan did. Is like, that's nice. Let's see what they do next week, and we'll determine then if they're really a hot team. Who's not hot? Not a team that anybody really cares about at this point, but I'm going to say it's the Albany Devils. Why? 3-15 the past 2 weeks. Week 4 and week 5, each week needing to use 15 ECUs in both weeks. So and we talked about teams having to use ECUs a lot this season. They've used 30 in the past 2 weeks. Why? Because they've got a bunch of guys on this team who are now starting to quit. There are some who are playing, who just show up for their games and do what they can to make this team okay. But we have too many guys who are an issue right now in this team. You know what? They beat the Pens. Okay, not a great team, but they beat them playing 4 ECUs one night this week. You know, there are guys quitting on the team. A guy that I had a lot of respect for, Smiles 57, who I liked a lot. Mid-game, quit, or maybe he lagged out, whatever might have happened. Wrote in the team chat that the team sucks and that he's out, basically saying that he quit. So what does LG do? They suspend him for 1 game instead of tossing him out of the league. Another player, I'm Canadian A. He came over from Albany just recently. They were trying to get him into a game. He wasn't coming into the dressing room because nobody sent him a party invite. He started a big fight with management there. He has apologized since, but he, again, you get a guy who just, for whatever reason, doesn't just be proactive and do what he can for the team. And I think a lot of these guys who are coming over to Albany are saying, "Oh my God, I'm being shoved into the grave. So no, I'm just not going to give a damn anymore." I think the guys who are playing there, I know Nature's playing there. I know a lot of other guys like What's the Matter, who's their goaltender there, is showing up and playing all the games that he can. But their personnel issues are a big problem now because they don't see themselves going anywhere, and now they're all just not giving a damn about what they're doing. And I would love to see the league crack down on guys like this because, everyone's, there are a lot of the guys on the team who are trying to play and win. A few of them are just not showing up on a regular basis because they don't want to play because the team's not doing well. It's time to grow up. So unfortunately, I mentioned them as a who's not team because they're suffering the stupidity and the childishness of some of their players, and they're winding up having to either forfeit or get almost a full team of ECUs to get them to play games. And I give Nature X credit for staying there and trying his damnedest to field the team. Part of me wishes I had still been there to help him out, but unfortunately he is dealing with the cards he's been dealt. And unfortunately, some of them just don't want to be there because they're children who want to win all the time. Well, I hate to say this, guys, you're not going to win all the time in life, so get used to it.
This is like Sib's version of revenge porn. airing out all the dirty laundry, showing his ex-team getting fucked live on air. That's good.
I've stopped short. I stopped short of actually showing the messages that are coming from these guys, and I may do that if a few more of them come. I think I'm just getting tired of the childishness that we're seeing from a lot of these guys in the league. It's just ridiculous what happens, and so 30 ECUs in the past 2 weeks. I know, Vibes, you've talked about what your count is up to now for ECUs.
Oof.
It continues to be a big problem in this summer league, and I don't know how you get around it. I'm sure it'll be gone for next season. Once 18 comes out and it's the fall and everybody feels like they can't take the summer off, I'm sure they'll all show up and play. But
summer's the redhead child of the NHL.
Oh,
right?
man, it's been...
Yeah, no kidding.
Let's be honest.
It's
Absolutely.
been just... Man, it's just been... Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I think I'm up to like, I don't know, it's got to be close to 50. It must be at like 45, 46, 47, somewhere along there in terms of ECU. We lost to the Bakersfield Condors last week because we put up 6 goals, but we allowed 7 because Mikey D couldn't stop a beach ball in that game. But he's actually a pretty decent goalie sometimes, but
I love that. You just literally shit on the guy and then go, well, maybe he's okay sometimes.
No, he is. He's good sometimes. He is, but he's just in that,
Wow.
Nothing.
That's
He couldn't stop a Ford Pinto with a dragnet in that game, so.
You want to explain Dragnet for everybody under 45?
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, I have no idea what you just said.
I'm pretty sure.
You don't know what a dragnet is? Are you serious?
I'm being completely 100% serious. I get the Ford Pinto thing.
You've never robbed the bank before?
Oh, I mean, it's not
You
usually
never
something I
robbed
enjoy
the
doing.
bank.
Kids these days, they don't know how to have fun.
Yeah, they try and stay out of trouble for the most part. I mean, that's their idea of fun. I don't necessarily agree with it all the time, but they're all good little kids these days.
Bunch of little girls. Go rob a bank. I'm just kidding. Don't do that.
Hey, so it's time to move on to our next topic, and it was a brief look at Cleveland. Is that how you have it titled here, Vibes?
Yeah, and I figure that the LG universe is gonna love this,
Well,
right?
I
So
made a special
This wasn't a
billboard,
joke.
and so we're going to call Cleveland Monsters this week as we discuss it. Um, just because I know how much they love when we focus on one team. Uh, I'll let you start, Vibes. Cleveland. Obviously, everyone remembers what happened last season. Um, is this a case of Freeze and his new management up in Columbus and everyone else learning a lesson out of this and doing it the right way?
I'm watching YouTube right now. It says 18 people that are watching right now. It just dropped to 3 as soon as you mentioned Cleveland. No, listen, I think that yes, I do think that. I think that Freeze realized what happened last season, and I think that he knows now that he had a really good team heading into that trade deadline. I know that wasn't really a trade that ruined it. But I feel like he had a really good team, and his organization made a move, and I think ultimately it ended up hurting them. And I do think that this is him and his team trying to like say, hey, let's have another go at it, because it's you know what I mean? Like it's not often the one that got away comes back, and that's what I think they're trying to do there in Cleveland. I think last year was the one that got away, and they're trying to get her back this season.
Ryan, any thoughts on obviously you were in the thick of everything going on in that division last season. Uh,
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
I'll just say I think Big Freeze and Co have done a terrific job retooling this season. I thought Gumba going at 5,750 was the steal of bidding. He's easily worth more. I think he's a terrific player. For Days Buddy has shown up and he's leading points right now with 38 goals, 27 assists for 65. Getting him has been terrific. Galaxy the Beast, and then I like the move for D Herms as well to get him back into the thick of things. They put together a great team. There's really no other way of saying it.
They've been really good, man, and they've been almost not human because it's like as a team that's trying to catch them in their division, and I'm trying to be quick because I don't want everyone to shut the show off. As a team that's trying to catch them in their division, let me just say they don't fucking lose. It's like they never lose. So it's just really hard to catch a team like that, and I think that you got to give them a little bit of respect and a little bit of courtesy and acknowledgement that they put together one hell of a team again 2 years in a row now.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be part of this Cleveland cult, so I'll leave it at that.
Nice. Well, let me just I'll finish up the discussion for you this way. For anybody who wants to complain about us talking about Cleveland. Winning percentage, power play percentage, penalty killing percentage, the whole total power play numbers 41 out of 129, penalty kill 9 goals on 87 attempts, power play goals allowed on power play plus minus of 314. They're in first place in every one of those categories. They're in second place in time on attack difference and average time on attack. Third place in, tied for fifth in penalty minutes with the least amount. Face-off percentage, they're sixth on that. They are on top of, what did I say, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 categories. If you look at the team categories in LG, they are on top of half of them. That's all you need to know. Winning percentage 77.8, power play percentage 31.8, penalty killing 89.7. You do that, and you put up the numbers they do, and you have the talent they have. That's why they're number one. That's all it needs to be said. You can argue with me how much you think they aren't, and they're really not that good. Look at the team numbers. If you can say they're really not that good after that, then quit the game because you're a moron. Plain and simple. So that's all I have to say about Cleveland. I let the numbers speak for themselves, and that's all you really need to look at, folks. Plain and simple.
Keep up the good work.
So, on to our next topic now, Stockton. So,
well, on to our next topic, and it's it's one we bought. And actually, I felt a little guilty about bringing it up last week because we talked a lot about some things that went on with Dead Soul, and Dead Soul wasn't here to talk about it. So, well, I tell you what, I'm going to let Vibes start this off, and then get Dead Soul involved in the discussion about what we talked about in general about trades being rejected and what's gone on the last couple of weeks with the Bogs and with player movement. Vibes. Obviously, you were somewhat involved in this as well. In always talking about management work with Dead Soul in that organization. Do you feel any differently about the situation now after a week's gone by of us discussing it?
ladies and gentlemen of the LG universe, there is a direct attempt being launched on us, on our lives, on what we do here as a unit, as a community. Okay, there is a war being waged upon us, and it is time for a revolution. It is time to grab our arms and take fight against this hypocrisy that is. No, I'm just kidding. But I think that we're obviously talking about the Bogs being a little bit overly involved in some of the trading and some of the things that have been going on, primarily in the NHL. And then as well, we want to talk about the fact that it seems like one of the Bogs has maybe had enough. And I was mainly because it affected my organization, well, Dead Souls organization, the organization that I'm a part of. It directly affected the Winnipeg Jets with the trade that was initially denied, talking about one that Dead Soul had made. So that's it. I just want to set the table and then get out of Dead Soul's way and let him maybe elaborate on the issue.
Yeah, well, I mean, the league has made some rule changes when it comes to how they go through each trade, and now instead of having automatic trades that go through at a certain time and throughout the weekend until the time that it stops on Sunday at 5 Eastern, basically now the Bog will review everything on a case-by-case, individual basis before they actually allow it, so they'll have to approve it themselves. And I guess in some cases it must be up for discussion with a number of people, and it seems like perhaps in other cases somebody might just click okay without maybe consulting others, and then that's where the problems lie, because it seems like there's been a few trades where people can think one thing and I guess others can think another, and that's where the problems lie. I mean, I think when it comes to the trading in this league, it needs to be the way that it has been, which is if you have a need and you have a player that you might want to get rid of or have to get rid of for different reasons, you have those reasons for getting rid of that player regardless of their talent and skill level. And if you can find a replacement player that will be able to dedicate their time and have a good attitude to go with it and to be a part of the team and be a team player the way that you would like to have, and that you should have that right to be able to choose that player how you want. Now, I understand with my situation, it was a little unique in that the league did see it as an unfair trade coming on my back. Basically they thought I was being trapped, and so they did try and step in and think that they were doing the right thing by saying, you know what, this person's just trying to take advantage of you. And I said, well, no, actually, I'm letting you know I'm fully aware of this person's skill and his name in this league and how he plays. But, I have certain needs that I would like to make. And, I think that it's up to me if I decide that I'd like to give up something for these qualities I believe will be coming back in this other player. So without going into every single detail, I mean, really what it comes down to is I think the league made a poor decision allowing the Bog to be very, very hands-on with a lot of these trades. I think it needs to go back to the way that it was on a case-by-case basis, that if people really truly saw that that there's some really unfair trades going on. Like bottom teams stacking some top teams with some really mediocre trades and giving tons for next to nothing. Those are the kind of trades that the league needs to be sure to, you know, to not allow. But when it comes to teams having players that they feel aren't really doing their part, even if they're a quote unquote skilled player, you should have that right to be able to choose who you want in return for that person. And with the league having an understanding that you're going to have to pay the price of if you make that mistake and it hurts you. But ultimately, I think it really comes down to when you make a trade. People should be letting everybody know who's on the block. I think if it's fair game for everybody to go out there and put their bid in for somebody that they would like off your team, that's really what it would come down to. And ultimately, some of the way the things are going right now is just I can't agree with. And unfortunately, my team was affected for a little while. We finally were able to move this player, but either way, I think it doesn't sound like the AHL has had this kind of trouble at all. And there's different reasons for that too, but it's something that I think needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I think just to summarize, I think on the trade front there's been some, and it does seem like it's isolated to the NHL. There's been a little bit bog over involvement and just a little bit of them making arbitrary decisions, pretty much taking full power out of the management's hands to make the trades that they feel are going to benefit their team. And I feel like that's pretty much the point of management, is to allow them, afford them that right to try and improve their teams throughout the season. And, if you're taking that ability out of their hands and you're basically deciding, what is okay for them and what's not, I think that's a huge problem.
Well, yeah, it's. We talked about this a good deal, and I'm hoping at some point that League Gaming does deal with this, and if they are a driving force behind what's been going on, then they really need to start listening to the community on it, because it's a big issue. And good.
Sorry, I'll add one quick thing though too, and the other issue with the manual thing that they are doing currently is, unfortunately, last week there was several trades that were made late Saturday evening,
Right,
and into Sunday, and through so basically several trades that were approved on both sides, but a bog had yet to approve them, never were approved by the bog by the 5 p.m. cutoff date, and therefore those trades were not allowed to be processed until the following week, which had a pretty big effect on some teams that really needed to make those trades. That was the biggest problem I saw happening with this whole manual system that they've changed to. And it's really, that's not going to change, with people having schedules being the way that they are. Sometimes they just can't make it. And unfortunately, it seems that Sloshy has had to step down from the bog. And it was right after this incident. So I don't know if it was just he was too busy altogether, or if it was part of this situation. But it was really unfortunate, because he was a really, he was a very active member of the bog, and he was one that would actually respond very quickly. Him and Manbear do an excellent job, as well as John, the rest of them that are on there too. But it's unfortunate when they have to step down in that kind of scenario that didn't have to happen.
Well, again, like I said, we've talked about this a good deal. Hopefully, things will settle in eventually, and we'll see what the NHL does in replacing Sloshy and how they're going to handle that the rest of this season. Let's hit on the last thing that we've been promising people, and that was our discussion of a starting six in each division. We've kind of sectioned out who's got what division, and we'll start with the Eastern Atlantic with Dead Soul. Talk to us about who your starting six would be in the Eastern Atlantic at this point.
So for the we're talking about the AHL All-Star game.
Yes.
If we were doing a hypothetical, okay. So I'd have probably Gumba going on left wing from the Monsters. Let's see here. Oh, sorry. Wrong one. I'm looking at the wrong list now. See, I made two lists, and this is why I messed up here. Okay, I'm sorry.
Gumby, you've
we're
been
going-
traded to the Eastern Atlantic.
You heard it here first.
Nice.
Sorry, I would start with Hockey Town from Hartford, left wing. Go with Bob Swagger, center for the Bears there. Lefty, another Hartford guy here, LaRocca, 420. Right D, Babata from the Bears, and probably put. Let's see here. Oh, he on that team. Tyler Loki in net. Is he am I in the right? Yeah, Tyler Loki. That's right. He's on the Phantom. Sorry.
Right.
I wanted to make sure I was getting in the right division and having my right list in front of me here. So I'd say Tyler Loki in net.
Vibes, Eastern North.
Eastern North. I mean, I was number one. I was very lucky to draw this division from my picks because it is, I mean, chock full of talent, and the decisions were not easy. That being said, my starting six. So as a center, I have Dirty Deeds 12-12 from the Toronto Marlies. He is 13-1-1 on the season in his 15 games played. He has 51 points on the year, 16 goals, 35 assists, and a plus 4, not floor, 4. And he's almost 57% on the draw. So when it comes to centers, I mean, you know, as I said, this division was tough. You could have looked at maybe Boonsop. I hate saying that name again, but Boonsop from Binghamton. I mean, there's a lot of choices here. You could have looked at even on Dirty Deeds' team with Paulie Chunks. You know, so there was a lot of decisions down the middle. But ultimately, Dirty Deeds 12-12 is my starting center. On the left wing, I have Nazi Two Face, who you know, he's he whatever. So he's 12-3
Well
on
said.
the year.
That was a very technical discussion there.
He's 12-3-0 on the season. He's got 45 points, 17 goals, 28 assists, and he is a plus 27. On the right side, on the right wing, I have Apparition, who I believe is actually Dirty Deeds' line mate. He is also 13-1-1, 46 points on the season, 27 goals, 19 assists, and he's a plus 34. He's kind of like, he seems to be the yin to Dirty Deeds' yang, or maybe he's the yang to his yin. I'm not sure how they work their relationship.
Hold on a second. Let me make sure that Ryan understands that reference too.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, good.
I got it. I got that one.
Want to make sure.
Well, you put a yin and your yang, and then you yell. So what do you call it? So then we have Philly's MVP. He's going to be my lefty. He's 13-2-0, 19 points on the season with 4 goals and 15 assists, and he's a plus 26. So he's my left defender. For right defense, you know, I was looking at Berger, who is also Philly's partner here. But, you know, I didn't want to make this basically, you know, Toronto +1. So I went with Singism, who is 11-4-0 on the season, 12 points, 1 goal, 11 assists, and he's a plus 25. And the one position is my goalie, who I don't think that there is a, you know, sure, I mean, I guess you could maybe make a case for other goaltenders. But hands down, and this isn't. I'm not saying this just because he said that he likes me on the YouTube chat, although that does help. My goalie is without a doubt Vesna, or as Dead Soul would say, Vezina. So Vesna, who is 19-3, he's posting a 1.79 goals against average, which I mean is microscopic.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got an 8.48 save percentage, which I mean is pretty much unheard of. And it's not that this guy has an amazing shutdown defense to where he's not facing any shots in his games. He's facing about 12 shots per game, which I mean is not extraordinarily high, but it's pretty average. So the fact that he's posting an 8.48 save percentage and allowing 1.79 goals against is ridiculous. And I mean, honestly, I look, I'm going to say right now that he may be the best goaltender that has ever crossed the LGAHL.
Wow. That's a big statement.
Yeah, that's huge. But, hasn't played a full season yet, so maybe we'll look at that in a little bit. When the season's over, we can come back to that.
He could arguably be the goaltender of the year. I would definitely go that far. He's been that amazing.
I'd say that.
Well, the last part about him being the best ever, that might be because he said he likes me on YouTube, but the rest of it's all legit.
Ryan, you had the Western Central. Please get us out of this mess.
Okay, so up first I have at forward for Days Buddy. He's leading the league in points with 65, 38 goals, 27 assists. He's playing terrific. At center, I got Elite Richter from Iowa, 13-1-1, 47 points, having himself a really, really nice season as well. And then here's where the most difficult decision had to be made. I went with Lewis 222. He's on Manitoba, which happens to be Vibe's team, going 12-1 so far this season with 41 points. Some guys that were in consideration were Gumba from Cleveland, Brink from Charlotte, and then Wes from Iowa. He probably would have been the guy, but for the sake of mixing it up, I went with the guy from Manitoba. Sorry. And then moving on to defense, I went with T-Ball and Sieg, both from Cleveland. They have the best numbers, and the best win-loss. T-Ball going 14-1. Sieg has the most points in the division. She's 12-2-1. Other notables are Hit by the Best 95 on Manitoba, Pitt Pens fan on Iowa, and then who else I got here? Troy from Cleveland again. Cleveland actually has terrific defense.
Right.
Really, really staggering. And then with goalie, I went with Maximus 001 from Cleveland. I could have gone with Rick Stoneman. I think Maximus has a couple more games played in games won, going 20-4 with an 81.8 save and a 2.26 goals against. Rick Stoneman, actually, funny enough, I don't think he has as many games played, but his save percentage is 81.9, and his goals against is 2.27, which is literally it's 0.01 on each category. So,
and
both of them are terrific.
He's a teammate of Be Nice over there in Iowa, correct?
Yes, he is.
And that goaltending over there, the way it is with those two, that's what makes me a fan of that team.
Absolutely, both can win games by themselves. Be Nice has done it for season after season after season. Nothing needs to be said about how good he is. Rick Stone, though, however, is having a awesome season in Iowa. Maximus in Cleveland as well.
And I like the pick of Siege as well. Siege was a pretty good defenseman last season, but definitely has stepped her game up and has played so much better this season. And maybe it's just a matter of getting out from underneath that mess, because I think she was doing pretty good the first half of last season, but has shown to be an even better defenseman in Season 5. And I'm so glad to see that team come back the way they have. And specifically people like Freeze and Sieg, who I talk to pretty regularly, play with, and drops a lot, and they're just good people. T-Ball as well. I like that management team, and good to see T-Ball and Siege get recognition, at least by us, on this. Western Pacific, I started out with Oriole Rules 44 with the Reign. He's 13-2. 13 goals, 28 assists, a plus 29 so far this season. 6 penalty minutes, keeping it low on that end. And for forwards, 74 hits. Really nice numbers there. If you know Orioles, he's a quiet leader, great skills. He understands how to play his position both offensively and defensively. He's, the biggest accomplishment, I think, this season, and I might have mentioned it before, is he has managed not to kill Fairman while being teammates, which if you've played with Fairman, really talented guy. I enjoy making fun of him, but he can be a real pain in the ass sometimes. And Orioles seems to know how to deal with him. So a big upside for Orioles, and I think deserves a nomination here. From the Gulls, Deer Hunter, 29-11. 9-5-1 this season, 17 goals, 31 assists, a plus 15. He's a guy who's all about the team, and obviously since he's running it, he has to be all about it. But he finds guys who want to work, outside of just their regular league games to get a better chemistry and just a better overall feel. So he winds up finding players who are willing to put in the time to do a little extra to make the team better. Hopefully he's a GM for seasons to come in this league, and just a good player and a good individual to talk to, and really honest. So I like Deer Hunter in this lineup as well, and another forward, and I'm picking 3 forwards, and obviously I'm picking 2 centers here with Deer Hunter and my next selection, which is I'm Just a Squid, who is now on the Barracudas this season. He is first in points with 56. He's 12-3 on the season. He leads the league in goals with, he's first in points in this division with 56. He leads the division in goals with 34, 22 assists, a plus 29. Solid veteran player who started really showing up here in PSN last season. He captains the line wherever he plays. I don't think it matters what team he's on. He always finds a way to score and to get his team to a victory. And with the numbers that he's putting up again this season, how can you not put him in there as a forward? Defenseman, Apollo 77, right D from the Stars. He is a plus 18, 10-2-1 on the season. 45 giveaways, but 42 takeaways. So, and you will see better numbers from defensemen in that area, but while it's typically not a factor that we look at much, I think it does mean something when your defenseman is doing that much work on takeaways. So, to me, he's a model defensive defenseman, plays the position very conservatively, but he takes his opportunities when given. And he's an anchor D man no matter wherever he plays for whatever team, and has done tremendous the last couple of seasons. The other the other defenseman on the Heat. No, I'm not picking Biggie just to piss him off, but I'm also picking J Sparky 88 because he's 9-4, plus 18, 12 points, 3 goals, 9 assists, 43 hits. He's what I would probably call a little more physical version of Biggie. Came over from Binghamton before week number 4, and has continued to play well. And maybe not the popular pick that other folks would have from the West, but I just like the way he's playing so far from the Heat, for the Heat. And like I said, just didn't want to pick Biggie. Might be a very obvious pick for a lot of folks. The goaltender for this one from the Barracudas, Nuo Kid. 18-9, 382 shots against. Still a 78 save percentage, 2.97 goals against, and a shutout. He's facing a lot of activity, and he's even on a team that's doing well offensively. He's seeing a lot of shots on goal and is keeping his goals against under 3. That alone, to me, makes him an incredibly valuable goaltender who, even when this team does well, if they do wind up having defensive struggles, he's shown to be there and to be very effective. So that rounds up my Western Pacific team.
So if we were running a tournament with those teams, obviously my team comes in first. Who comes in second out of you guys?
Everyone else in the league, just because they have to listen to you. Hello?
That's the correct answer, by the way. Yeah, just one final point. I love to see Nuko Kid succeed. He's had a couple really, really tough seasons with the Barracuda, season 3 and season 4. Mm-hmm. Season 4 progressively a little bit better, but season 3 was really rough. It's nice to see him finally, being able to break out.
Yeah, I look. I think everyone picked in this make-believe team that we all put together. I think we have a lot of good names there, and I would love to see them play. Unfortunately, the way the things wound up last season with trying to get the games played, we're not attempting to do that this year. We're just looking to pick all-star teams, and hopefully, I've got a couple more teams that have to submit to me here in the AHL. We'll have the voting out soon. Hopefully on Sunday at some point you'll be able to start voting for the all-star team again. So look forward to that, and we'll see how many of these players wind up on the real all-star team. Anything to add as we get ready to bow out here and get done with this show?
I'm just surprised that I wasn't mentioned on Ryan's team. I figured I'd be in that, considering I have 13 points in 12 games played. So I figured that I would have been mentioned. So I'm a little taken back by that.
If we were doing an all defense team, maybe, but
I don't even know
really,
if
I don't even know if you'd be there either. But
no, I don't even know if I'd be in that one.
But,
we're doing an all wise ass team. Maybe it would be different.
I mean, maybe if we were building a house of shit, then maybe I'd be mentioned. But otherwise,
I think I'd be on that team as well.
Yeah, well, some of us are gifted in other areas,
Yeah, someday I'll find out what my gift is. I still haven't found it out yet.
You're just overall gifted.
Well, next week we are next Sunday the 9th is the trade deadline. We're going to, at least some of us are going to do a show live on that Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern, so that we kind of are on one side or the other of the trade deadline and talk about trades that were made. So tune in then. We'll, we as a group haven't discussed when we're going to do our show next week. We may do it on Friday, but if the guys are up for it, we may tack it on to the Sunday trade show. But we'll let you know how that goes and what our plans are once we figure that out. But again, trade show next Sunday. Always fun to watch these things come down at the last second and talk about them right away, because it's there's usually some big deals that are going on, and we'll try and get on some of the GMs as we go through some of these trades.
You planning on doing another show like we did last year? Is that what we're gonna do?
Yeah. I think that was that. We've done a couple of those now, a couple of years in a row in the AHL, and they've been a lot of fun just because there's some crazy crap that comes down at the end, and it's always fun to figure out why they're doing what they're doing.
Those are always exciting. Oh yeah,
for sure. So that's it. Dead Soul, Ryan, Vibes. Thanks again for being part of this.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure.
And we will we'll talk to everybody again next week. Again, AHLPSN this week. Hope you guys enjoyed the show again, and we will be back next week to talk more about what's going on in the AHL. Until then, this is T-Sip saying so long, and we'll talk to you later.